Good morning, everybody. Sanbonani. I'm really honored and privileged to be here, standing in front of you. When I heard Ms. Hayes mentioning all the dignitaries, I realized I didn't do all of that, but if I can say in shorthand, all protocol observed. I honor the dignitaries, the parents, the caregivers who have nurtured these precious lives, the teachers, of course, who are at the front line of the growth and the development, and of course you, the learners class of 2022. I am also here with my mother, who has stood by me since day one and continues to, and I know it's not something I take for granted that she's still with me. And I also want to honor all those who stand with me who are in this realm and the next. And I also want to honor past pupils as well, possibly teachers, people who are no longer with us, but whose spirits continue to guide and support our lives. To the class of 2022, it's going to happen, so I'm going to speak like you are the class of 22. Everyone's getting to the next stage. So you are at a really powerful intersection between an ending and a beginning. You're at the brink of emerging into a fuller versions of yourselves. You're on the precipice of adulting. And I think with all of these things that are happening, there's probably a lot that you're feeling. Perhaps a sense of like ready to go, maybe school's been holding you back, perhaps a bit of dread, just overwhelmed, all the choices, all the decisions that you have to make, perhaps a bit of regret, some things that you didn't get to, that you sort of might wish you had done with your schooling, a lot of anxiety, I'm sure, there's high stakes, it feels like a lot of pressure, you're made to feel like Matric. Everything's been building up to this moment. I think what's important to know is that you might be feeling all of these things, or maybe even none of them. You could actually be numb. But there's really no right or wrong way to feel, and that it's also possible to hold multiple truths at the same time. And also knowing that whatever you feel now is probably going to change, and that ultimately, if you allow it, actually, this change is a beautiful thing. I've been introduced so beautifully. Thank you so much. It's always like, ooh, that's me? Okay. You're living your life and it feels like this random meandering, and then somehow you hear that it's come together. So thank you for that beautiful introduction. But I'd also like to reintroduce myself, honoring the name which I have consciously and unconsciously always strived to live up to. So my name is Nomzamo, and I was named after Winnie Nomzamo Mandela, a rock which is the foundation of this country, another woman who I feel has not been honored as much as she needed to be. And then secondly, my name means Ukzama, so it's one who strives, who makes an effort. And I think that in my striving, in different moments in my life, I have tried, motivated by different things and for different reasons. But I think I've always tried to operate by a set of core values that have anchored me. So I turned 40 last year, and I remember me and other members of the fourth floor were laughing because we thought like by this stage we'd have figured it all out, right? I am really still in the process of becoming, still in the process of unfolding. And so I encourage you guys to know that there is no age limit. I see people who've got the pressure of, by 30 I would have done this, by this age. That really is, life doesn't work that way. We all are at different paces. If you think you wanted to get married, my friends who got married quickly are already divorced by now. If you thought you wanted to be a parent, sometimes babies don't come and you have to wind. So just stay open to the fact that age can sometimes be quite an arbitrary marker for the things that you want to achieve. I stand here to, as I said, I'm unfolding, so I'm not an expert. So please take what you will from what I say. Whatever doesn't resonate, feel free to put it in your spam. And then also other things, perhaps you can just put them in reserve because it might not make sense now. But as life unfolds, you might be like, she was onto something. So broad themes, allowing change, releasing the need for certainty, embracing imperfection, embracing vulnerability, and trusting your way. So a bit about me. I was born and raised here in Durban. I'm the first of two sisters that come behind me, so I'm the firstborn. I was fortunate to be raised by both of my parents, and I went to the same school for 12 years. I come from a family of activists, political activists, academic activists, and they instilled in me a sense of duty and the belief that you have to use what you have to do what you can for others, that through deliberate action we can change the world, we can change our societies, we can change our communities. So it's never kind of good enough to be like, oh, well, that's just the way things are. Things are that way because people constructed them that way, because systems were designed. So if we can make things, we can unmake them, and we can remake different things. So I think that sparked in me a desire to change the world. And at the time, I believed that law was the way to do this. I was drawn to law as a tool for social change. I also used to watch LA Law. You guys might not know it, but that was like my favorite show. So that also inspired me. But really, I saw law as a potential for a tool for social change. That took me to UCT. And the biggest motivation was this was, at this stage, the furthest I could get from my parents. I just felt that I needed to find my way, kind of figure out who I am outside of their gaze. So UCT university is incredible. There's also so many different places to learn. So if university is not in your path, that's also great. But I think for me, UCT Law School, there were parts of it which were really great, but there were also parts of it which I didn't relate to, the institutional culture, and I didn't really feel like our legal education was preparing us to do the real work that we needed in South Africa. We were being groomed to go into law firms, and as you know, in this country, access to justice is such a real issue. In fact, my essay I applied to the Constitutional Court, was really about the shortcomings in our legal education, and that is what was able to get me into the Constitutional Court. I also managed to get in because I had a friend, and she was the one who always knew when the tests were coming up. She was the one reading the notice boards. So she was like, there's this thing I think you should do. And that reminds me that you should always try have a study circle. So studying can be individual, but it's also great to do it in community because there's someone who will be keeping their eye on the snacks. Someone else is going to make the playlist. And so collectively, it's really good to draw on different strengths and to have a learning circle. And I became an advocate. I joined the Johannesburg Bar. A lot of people ask me, actually, how could you do something so brave at such a young age? And the reality is that I thought I was going to do articles, but I missed the deadline. And then I was like, I need a fallback plan. So it was actually, that's how I got into advocacy like that. And sometimes, the detour is the path, and things don't go as you thought, but that might be the way that you were supposed to have gone. So don't get too attached to your plans. The things I loved about practice was problem solving, being able to support people to reach outcomes that they wanted. But what didn't really work for me was the actual lifestyle. I think there's relentless demands. I think this applies to all of the professions. I hear the same thing from the accountants, the bankers, that an insane grind culture is normalized. So not resting, not taking breaks. And we're now so much more aware of the implications that this has for our mental health, for our physical health. But it was normalized to just work insanely. In order to cope in this type of environment, I felt myself hardening. So in order not to feel, in order to deal with the overwhelm, you just start closing off your heart, you just start numbing. And I think law also encourages this sort of separation between emotions and the law. So I found myself in an environment where I was getting harder and harder, and I was almost afraid because I could see my seniors above me, people who'd been in the game for so long, and they'd disconnected from their families, they were strangers to their children, and I kind of could see how that happens, and it freaked me out. And also, I wasn't well. When you are living a life which is perhaps in conflict with your value, that's what leads to dis-ease. And so it was really difficult, but I had to take some big decisions, disappointing my parents. Everyone's proud to have an advocate. A sense of, sorry mom, a sense of obligation. You know, I was one of the few black women advocates, and to have the privilege to be in such a position, the sense that I'm leading down the team, and understanding that, you know, our country needs me. But I think this was my first important lesson, which I think gave me the courage to leave, was the fact that despite the status, despite everybody else's expectations, it didn't feel right to me. I left, and the next stage of my life, I call it becoming I call myself a recovering lawyer. So there I was in a sort of a detox state and went to therapy and really got time to address and to deal with all of the emotional stuff that you shoved aside. So when you're in the rat race, sometimes when you have to keep going, you just shove things down, but things don't go anywhere, right? They're there. They're in your body. They're in your cells. And so I was really happy that I took that time. And in therapy, I really learned about a really important concept, which is about perfectionism and the dangers of perfectionism. So the way that I understand perfectionism, as Brené Brown teaches it, you might have seen her. She's an excellent, this is her area. She does research in shame and vulnerability. But she described perfectionism as performing, pleasing, and proving. So these are all things that we do to satisfy external. You sometimes perform playing a role, pleasing other people, and trying to prove, right? Because often we can have this sense that we're not enough, but we think, when I get the job, when I get the car, when I get the clothes. So our accomplishments become a way of trying to prove. And all of this perfectionism is actually trying to mask a core insecurity. And so the answer, or what she suggests as the antidote to perfectionism, is vulnerability. Perhaps being willing to not look perfect, to not know what's going to happen. So what supported me in this journey, and also in my recovering law phase, was I came into contact with the practice of yoga. So I'd started, actually, it was initially just stress management when I was a stressed out lawyer. But then as I changed my identity and I lost my profession, you know, so much is about what you do. So I had a lot of shame, a lot of discomfort, and I hated social situations. Like, what do you do? You know, you're just kind of like figuring it out. But I think what yoga did is that, you know, it's a practice which there's obviously the physical parts, but it's a holistic approach to life. And it got me to ask the questions: who are you? Not based on what I achieved, not based on what I have, but my soul, who are you? And I think that exploration really allowed me to connect with parts of myself and to really just know, I mean, we can know it theoretically, but to feel that I'm not just a body, I'm a mind, I'm a soul as well, and learning how to honor all of those parts of myself. So that really, I would say, is a bit of the background to the holistic approach that I've taken on in life. I think it's sometimes a bit dangerous, toxic positivity, which tells us that we need to be happy all the time and the goal is happiness. Happiness is great. Sadness is also real. Jealousy is real. We've got a range of human emotions, and we just need to be able to support ourselves through when we're not necessarily at our best. So now I'm here, and I'm at a place where I'm still learning, I'm still becoming. I'm seeking to integrate my healing background, my justice background, and it's coming together in something which I call healing justice. 4 things which I would say are some sort of tools and tips that have sustained me. So number 1 is belong to yourself. So you obviously are members of communities and we must always do our best, but belong to yourself. Independence is important. Making your own money, being able to support yourself the best that you can. And you know, I was so moved by the song that you sang about Amadota and the gender-based violence scourge that we're under. I see these days that there's quite a strong kind of baddie culture, and part of it is trying to get men to pay for you for certain things. And I see smart, intelligent, professional women who have all of the capability to take care of themselves, but there's some sort of a thing about getting someone else to pay for it. And with no heat, no judgment, I just want to say that that kind of setting up, when you belong to someone else, there's consequences to that. Nothing is necessarily free. So I'm not blaming the victims. That you need to own your own life, and I really encourage you in whichever way that you can to do that. Community is important. We don't always come from communities we can relate to, but with the internet and with all of everything else, we can be intentional about communities that we create. Embrace vulnerability. You're not always going to know. You're sometimes going to make mistakes. You might look the fool or be a bit awkward, but that's all part of the journey. We can't all be super cool all the time. And yeah, I just thank you for this time. I think I should probably cap it there.